The words hung in the air like a thick fog. "I have a date," Mara said, her voice nonchalant, as though she were talking about something as trivial as picking up groceries. I looked up from the mug I had been absent-mindedly staring into. "A date?" I repeated, not sure if I had heard her correctly. "With who?" Her fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the kitchen counter, her eyes not meeting mine. "Just someone from work. It's no big deal, really." I almost laughed. Almost. But there was something in the way she said it that made it feel like a punch to the gut. My mind raced, but I couldn't process the words. A date? My wife was telling me she had a date? I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my calm. I wasn't the kind of guy who exploded over small things. I had learned to stay collected, to hold my ground in conversations, even when the ground beneath me was shaking. But this felt like it might break something inside me. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, barely keeping the edge out of my voice. She shrugged, looking around the room like she was distracted by everything but me. "A couple of weeks. We've just been texting." A couple of weeks. That was how long this had been happening. Long enough for her to feel comfortable enough to tell me. Long enough for her to be so casual about it. My thoughts began to spiral. "So, you've been texting this guy behind my back for weeks now?" "No," she said quickly, lifting her hands as if to dismiss the accusation. "It's not like that. We've just been talking. You know, work stuff. We're colleagues, Declan." But the words didn't make sense. Colleagues. Texting for weeks. Making plans to meet up. This wasn't about work anymore. "Okay," I said slowly, trying to steady my breathing. "So, you're just going to go out with him, and I'm supposed to be okay with it?" She hesitated before speaking again, the look in her eyes now shifting from indifference to something more defensive. "It's just one date. It's nothing. Honestly, I need this. It's just been hard lately." I nodded, though it was the furthest thing from something I understood. "Hard? How?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral, though it felt like every word I spoke was being squeezed out of me. "Everything," she said, her voice softer now, like she was unsure if she should say it aloud. "I don't know. I just feel like I've lost touch with who I am. And I thought meeting someone outside of our usual routine might help." The explanation left me cold. What did she mean by lost touch? Lost touch with me? With our life? I thought back to the countless nights I had stayed up late, working through reports or handling the kids' problems, and there had been no mention of this. I set my mug down, the ceramic clinking lightly against the counter. "So this guy is supposed to fix that? Fix what's broken between us?" I asked, though the bitterness I felt crept into my voice despite myself. She bit her lip. "I didn't say that. I just need to figure things out. And I can't do that without stepping away for a bit. From everything. From you." "From me?" Those words stung more than I expected. I hadn't seen this coming. Not in a million years. But I wasn't going to lose my cool. Not yet. I took a deep breath, swallowing the frustration rising inside me. "I don't get it, Mara. We've been married for years. We've been through a lot. And now, you think going on a date with another guy is what you need?" "I never said it was what I needed," she shot back, the defensiveness creeping into her tone. "But yeah, maybe I do. Maybe I need to remind myself who I am outside of being your wife and the kids' mom." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It was like I was hearing the same words over and over, but they meant something completely different each time. Something had changed, something big, and I had no idea how it had slipped past me without warning. The quiet tension between us stretched, thick and unspoken. "And if I'm not okay with it?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "What happens then?" Mara looked at me for a moment, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. "Then I guess that's just something you'll have to figure out." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. I wasn't prepared for them. I hadn't seen this coming, hadn't expected her to say that, especially not after everything we had been through. She was telling me this wasn't about us. It was about her. "Okay," I said, a calmness in my voice that I didn't quite feel. "Go on your date, Mara. But don't be surprised if things aren't the same when you get back." She blinked, surprised by my response. "What do you mean?" I said slowly, leaning forward so my voice was just above a whisper, "that this is going to change everything between us. Don't expect me to just wait around and pretend nothing's happening." I stood up, looking at her one last time before I turned to walk away. But as I reached for the door to leave the room, I felt her gaze on my back, a mixture of confusion and something else in her eyes. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but one thing was certain. This was the beginning of something I couldn't control, and I was ready to let it unfold. I spent the rest of the evening in a haze. It was like I was walking through someone else's life, looking in from the outside, unable to grasp what was happening. The words, "I have a date," kept repeating in my mind, echoing through every corner of the house. I didn't even know what to think anymore. Was this really happening? Was she really telling me she was going to meet another guy, while I sat here, like some passive spectator to my own life? As the night went on, I tried to get some work done, but nothing stuck. The tasks that would usually feel like small distractions now seemed irrelevant. My mind was occupied with one thing, Mara. I tried to focus on the routine, the kids' bedtime, brushing my teeth, the kind of mundane tasks that typically settled me. But the silence in the house was deafening. The absence of her presence, the lingering echo of her words, kept clawing at me. She had gone upstairs after our brief conversation, disappearing behind the closed door of our bedroom. I couldn't bring myself to join her, and I couldn't figure out why. Part of me wanted to sit down with her, demand more answers, ask questions that could tear everything wide open. But another part of me, the one I hated, urged me to stay silent. Maybe if I kept quiet, I wouldn't have to face the storm she was about to unleash. I kept thinking back to the way she had said it. It's just a date. But something in her eyes told me she was already lying to herself. There was more going on here than just dinner with a colleague. This wasn't a nothing situation. And yet, that's exactly how she tried to downplay it. It wasn't until later that night that I realized something important. I wasn't angry. I wasn't furious or blindsided with rage. It wasn't about jealousy either. It wasn't about her going out with another guy. It was about how little I meant to her in that moment. She had casually brushed off my concerns like they were irrelevant. She was looking for something she wasn't finding with me. It hit me like a cold slap. My wife, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, was stepping away from everything we had built, and she wasn't even looking back. I wasn't going to let this slide. I couldn't. But I also knew that I had to handle this carefully. If I exploded, if I let all my emotions run wild, I'd just be another angry husband who couldn't cope with his wife's independence. That's the last thing I wanted to be. I needed to play this carefully. But the question was, how? The next morning, Mara was already gone when I woke up. She had left early for work, probably in an attempt to avoid me, to avoid any more conversations. But I couldn't let it go. I knew I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. I spent the day in a daze. Work was a blur, and by the time the kids were back home, I felt like a stranger to myself. I wanted to say something to them, to have some semblance of normalcy, but the weight of Mara's words crushed me from the inside out. Then, as the evening wore on, the doorbell rang. It wasn't expected. No one came over at this hour, and I certainly wasn't in the mood for visitors. I dragged myself to the door, only to find Mara standing there, looking a little out of place. I didn't know what to expect from her. Her face was unreadable, but there was a faint smile. "Hey," she said softly, her voice cautious. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in, though I could already feel the tension building. This wasn't going to be an easy conversation, but this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. I wasn't going to just sit there and let her pretend this was nothing. I had to make her understand that this wasn't just some small misunderstanding. She entered, and we stood awkwardly in the hallway for a moment. She was trying to be calm, but I could sense that same unease I had felt earlier in the day. She wasn't sure how to handle this any better than I was. "I've been thinking about what you said," Mara began, breaking the silence. "About the date." I crossed my arms, trying not to appear too defensive, though I was starting to feel the pressure build in my chest. "What about it?" I asked, keeping my tone steady, even though my heart was racing. Her eyes flickered for a moment before she spoke again. "I don't want to hurt you. I really don't. But I need you to understand that I'm not doing this because I'm unhappy with you. It's just, I need something for myself. Something I've lost, or never really had. I've been so focused on being your wife, being the kid's mom. I forgot about who I am, what I want." I looked at her, unsure of how to respond. "So a date is the answer? Running off with another guy is going to fix all that?" The words felt like they slipped out without me meaning to say them, but once they were out there, I couldn't take them back. Mara's face hardened, and I saw a flash of something. Anger? Before she took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. "I never said it was the solution, Declan. But it's something I need to do. I can't keep pretending like everything's fine when I don't even know who I am anymore." I wasn't sure if I was angry, sad, or just confused, but it was clear that what I thought we had wasn't enough for her anymore. She needed to find something outside of our life. And maybe she was already gone. Maybe I'd never truly known her. There was a moment of silence, and in that silence, something shifted inside me. It was as though I was seeing the situation for the first time, through her eyes, not mine. She wasn't asking for permission. She was trying to justify something she had already decided. And I wasn't going to change her mind. But I wasn't going to let it go either. I think we both need time to think, I said, my voice steady but quieter now. And when you come back from this date, things will be different. I can't promise you everything will go back to how it was. But I think we both need to know where we stand. She nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. I understand. And I hope you understand, too. She didn't say anything else, just turned and walked out of the door, leaving me standing in the empty hallway. I could hear the faint click of her heels fading away into the distance. And just like that, everything was different. The next few days passed in a strange blur. I couldn't fully focus on work, or the kids, or even the simple tasks of everyday life. It felt like I was living in a fog, with Mara's words echoing in my head. I kept replaying the conversation over and over, trying to find some sense in it, trying to understand what I was missing. I hadn't expected this. I wasn't prepared for her to just throw everything we had built aside, like it was something insignificant. A date? With someone else? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to the situation than she was telling me. Every time I passed the bedroom door, I hesitated, wondering if she was behind it, preparing for her date. I thought about how she had walked out that night, her face calm, yet there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't pinpoint, that told me she wasn't as sure of this as she let on. Was she running from something? From me? Or was it simply about wanting something she felt she couldn't get from me anymore? I hated how she made it sound like I was the problem. It wasn't about me not being a good husband, was it? I couldn't help but question myself. Was I really enough for her? Had I somehow failed her? The questions swirled in my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. My chest ached every time I thought about it. And yet, I wasn't sure if I was angry or just deeply confused. She wasn't doing this to hurt me, she said. But wasn't that exactly what was happening? By the time the evening of her date finally arrived, I was a wreck. The kids were already asleep, and the house was quiet. I tried to keep busy, cleaning up, fixing a few things around the house. Anything to distract myself from the reality that Mara was about to go out with another man. I checked the clock again, 7:30 p.m. She was supposed to leave at 8. My heart hammered in my chest. I didn't know why I was so anxious. I didn't know what I expected to happen. She had already made her decision. Yet, the thought of her walking out the door, of her leaving me for someone else, it was like a knife twisting in my gut. Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. I knew she was standing there, watching me. I could feel her presence like an electric current in the room. Slowly, I turned to face her. She was dressed up, no surprise there. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she looked at me, like there was something she needed to say, something important. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What was there left to say? What could I say that wouldn't make this situation worse? She stood there for a moment, her hand on the doorframe, as if she were waiting for me to say something, anything, that would make this situation make sense. But the truth was, it didn't make sense. Not to me. I'm going, she said quietly, breaking the silence. Her tone was softer than usual, like she was trying to tread lightly. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak. I'm going, but I need you to understand something, Declan. I raised an eyebrow, urging her to continue. Her eyes softened. This isn't about you. It's not. I don't want you to think I'm leaving you, or that I'm unhappy with everything we've built. But I need to do this. I need to figure things out for myself. I wanted to scream, to tell her that I didn't understand, that it wasn't fair for her to drag me into this emotional whirlwind and expect me to just let it happen. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me had shifted, and instead of shouting or fighting with her, I stood there, quiet, like I was the one who needed to process this. I'm not going anywhere, she added, as if reading my mind. I'm not looking for someone else, Declan. I just need to be myself again. I need to remind myself who I am outside of this life. I could feel my hands begin to shake. I didn't want to hear this. I didn't want to be reminded of how little she seemed to value what we had. How long has it been, Mara? I asked quietly, my voice tight. How long have you been feeling like this? How long have you been checking out of this marriage without saying a word to me? She hesitated, her gaze falling to the floor. I don't know. It's been building up for a while. Maybe longer than I realized. But I didn't want to hurt you, Declan. I didn't want to make it harder than it had to be. But you've already made it harder, I whispered, my chest aching with every word. You've already made it harder by not telling me, by not giving me a chance to fix whatever's broken. She looked up at me then, her face a mixture of regret and resolve. I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy, but I promise, this isn't about us falling apart. It's about me figuring out what I need, what I want. I didn't say anything for a long time. I couldn't. It felt like if I spoke, I might break, and I wasn't ready for that. You don't have to go, I said eventually, almost to myself, as if I were begging for her to stay, even though I knew she wouldn't. She bit her lip, conflicted. I have to, Declan. I'm sorry. And with that, she turned and walked out the door. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. The sound of her footsteps faded as she made her way to her car, and I was left standing in the silence of our empty home. I wanted to be angry, to shout after her, but instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of defeat. I didn't know who I was anymore, or where we stood. All I knew was that something had changed, irreparably, and I wasn't sure if I could get it back. But then, a thought crept into my mind, something I hadn't considered before. What if this was the best thing for both of us? What if this date, this time apart, was exactly what we needed to figure out what was next? It didn't have to mean the end of everything. And so I waited, for her to return, for the answers, for the truth that was out there, somewhere, just waiting to be uncovered. When Mara walked back into the house that night, something inside me shifted. I expected to feel anger the second I saw her. I expected my mind to be filled with images of her sitting across from some other guy, laughing, smiling, looking at him the way she used to look at me. But when the door opened, the first thing I felt was an eerie calm. It wasn't peace. It wasn't acceptance. It was the quiet before a storm, and I knew I was holding something back. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from work or stress. It was a tiredness that came from pretending to be happy, pretending that what she had just done didn't rip a hole straight through our marriage. I noticed her hesitation when she closed the door, as though she was unsure of the version of me she'd find waiting on the other side. I didn't ask how her date went. I didn't want to know the details. Instead, I just sat on the couch, my arms crossed, staring at her like I was trying to read every unspoken word on her face. So, I finally said, my voice sharp enough to make her flinch slightly. Did you find what you were looking for? She froze for a moment, her lips pressing together before she set her purse down. Declan, can we not do this right now? She asked quietly, like she was talking to a child throwing a tantrum. That tone, it cut deeper than any confession she could have made. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was becoming someone she looked at with pity, and I hated it. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, and stared at the floor for a moment before replying. You want to go on a date? Fine. You want to figure yourself out? Fine. But don't walk back into this house and act like I'm some piece of furniture you can just ignore when you're done playing whatever game this is. Mara sighed, rubbing her forehead like she was the one being tortured here. It's not a game, Declan. Stop saying that. I needed this. I needed to feel like I still exist outside of this marriage. I let out a bitter laugh. And did you? Did dinner with him give you that? Did he help you find yourself? My voice cracked slightly, and I hated myself for it. I wasn't supposed to sound weak, but I did. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just broken. And that's what made her finally turn to me. Her eyes softened, and she stepped closer. Declan, it's not about him. It's about me. It's about how I feel when I look at my life and wonder where the hell I am in all of this. When was the last time we talked about our dreams? Our plans? When was the last time you looked at me like I wasn't just the mother of your kids or the woman who does the laundry? I wanted to scream that I still looked at her that way, that I loved her more than she realized. But the words got stuck in my throat. Because deep down, maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe I had been going through the motions, just like her. Maybe this whole marriage had turned into a routine, and I hadn't even noticed. But then I remembered her words earlier in the week. How easily she said, I have a date. And something inside me hardened again. You don't fix a marriage by going out with someone else, I said coldly. You don't figure yourself out by running into someone else's arms. Mara's face changed. There was a flash of anger there now, something I hadn't seen in a long time. You think I don't know that? You think I want this? You think it was easy for me to even say that to you? I told you the truth, Declan, because I didn't want to lie to you anymore. I needed something real, even if you hate me for it. I stood up slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. You're right, I said, my voice quieter now. You didn't lie to me, but you broke something tonight. Something that's not going to just snap back like nothing happened. You wanted me to understand. Fine. I understand. I understand that I'm not enough for you anymore. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her and into the kitchen, needing space before I said something I'd regret. But as I reached for a glass of water, I felt it, her eyes on me, filled with something I couldn't read. Guilt? Regret? Or was it just fear that I was finally seeing her for who she was now? Neither of us spoke for the rest of the night. She went upstairs, and I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because I wasn't going to let her walk all over me like I was some backup plan. If she wanted space, I'd give her space, but not the kind she expected. I was going to make her see what it felt like to lose control of everything she thought was safe. And I already knew exactly where to start. The silence in our house the next morning felt almost violent. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from peace or comfort. It was sharp, heavy, like it could cut through my skin if I sat with it too long. Mara barely spoke to me as she made coffee, her movements mechanical, her face carefully neutral. I watched her from the kitchen table, feeling like I was staring at a stranger. She didn't look at me once. It was as if she was somewhere else entirely, her mind still stuck on whoever she had been with the night before. That thought made my stomach twist. I wasn't going to ask her how it went. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was desperate to know. But the truth? The curiosity was eating me alive. I imagined her sitting across from him, laughing at some dumb joke, maybe touching his arm in that soft, casual way she used to do with me. The idea of it was unbearable, but I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want her to see me falling apart. Not yet. Declan, she said suddenly, her voice breaking through the silence. I looked up, surprised to hear my name. She set her mug down and sighed, running a hand through her hair. We need to talk about last night. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Oh, we do? And what exactly do you want to talk about, Mara? How was your date? Did you enjoy it? Was it everything you needed to find yourself? She winced at the sarcasm in my tone, but didn't back down. This isn't about hurting you. I told you that from the beginning. I needed to feel like I was alive again. Last night wasn't what you think it was. We just talked. I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Right? Just talked. That's what people always say when they're trying to justify something they know is wrong. I shook my head, unable to hide my frustration. Do you even realize how messed up this is? You walk out of our home to go on a date with another guy, and then you come back expecting me to just accept it? Her jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw something dark flash in her eyes. What do you want me to say, Declan? That I regret it? That I wish I didn't go? Because I can't say that. I don't regret it. And maybe that's what hurts the most, but I can't lie to you about it. That admission hit me harder than I expected. She didn't regret it. She was looking me dead in the eyes and saying she would do it again. Something inside me broke in that moment, but instead of lashing out, I felt an eerie calm settle over me. I realized that fighting her wasn't the answer. If I tried to hold on to her with force, she'd just push further away. No, I needed to take a different approach. I stood up slowly, my hands resting on the back of the chair. You know what, Mara? Fine. If that's what you need, go ahead. But don't think I'm just going to sit here waiting for you to come home like some loyal dog. If this is the game you want to play, then don't be surprised when I stop playing by the rules. Her expression changed instantly. Confusion, maybe even fear. What's that supposed to mean? I smirked, but there was no humor in it. It means you're not the only one who can change the script. You think I can't find myself too? Maybe I've been just as lost as you have, but I didn't need to run to someone else to figure it out. But maybe it's time I start thinking about what I need. The look on her face told me she hadn't expected that. For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked unsure. Declan, don't start. Don't start what? I cut her off, my voice low but firm. Don't start acting like I have a life outside of you. Don't start realizing I don't need to sit here and watch you walk out the door to another man. I shook my head, stepping closer so that I was standing just a few feet from her. You've made it clear that you're looking for something I'm not giving you. But here's the thing, Mara. If you think I'm going to beg you to stay, you're wrong. I'm done begging. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, but no words came out. It was the first time in a long time that I saw her speechless, and I knew I had hit a nerve. I turned and walked toward the hallway, leaving her standing there in the kitchen, staring after me like she didn't recognize the man she married. All day, I thought about what I had said, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I meant it. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to figure herself out while I slowly crumbled inside. I had to take control of my own life, even if it meant making choices that scared me. Later that night, I made my first move. I won't lie, my hands were shaking as I did it, but I knew it was the only way forward. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hovered over a name I hadn't thought about in years, an old friend, someone who had once known me better than anyone else, before Mara came along. I didn't know what I was planning exactly. I just knew that I needed to do something that would break this cycle of me waiting for her to decide my worth. And when I finally hit call, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement bubbling inside me. What came next would shake everything between Mara and me to its core. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single second. I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the house and the occasional sound of Mara shifting in the bedroom upstairs. I wondered if she was sleeping peacefully or if she was lying awake like me, thinking about what I had said. Something told me she wasn't as calm as she wanted me to believe. My words earlier, about not waiting for her, must have planted a seed of doubt. For years, I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the man who never raised his voice or stirred the waters. But now, she had seen a different version of me, one that wasn't afraid to push back. I think that scared her more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, I made breakfast for the kids, trying to act like everything was normal. But there was no hiding the tension. Mara came down late, her hair still a mess, and she didn't look at me once as she grabbed a cup of coffee. I caught her sneaking glances at me, though, like she was trying to figure out if I was serious about what I had said. I didn't say much, just asked her if she had any plans for the day. She hesitated for a second before saying she had errands to run. That was a lie. I could see it in her face. I didn't call her out, but I filed it away in my mind. If she was going to play this game, I would play it better. As soon as she left, I found myself staring at my phone again, my thumb hovering over that old contact name, Naomi. She had been my closest friend back in college, the one I could talk to about anything. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I married Mara, honestly, but I remembered how easy it was to be around her, how I never felt judged, never felt like I had to fight for her attention or approval. It felt wrong to call her, like I was crossing some line, but the thought of just sitting there, waiting for Mara to find herself, was worse. I needed someone to remind me of who I was before I became this man who begged for scraps of affection. I took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang twice before I almost hung up, but then I heard her voice. Declan? Oh my God, is that you? She sounded genuinely happy, almost shocked, and I couldn't help but smile despite the storm brewing inside me. We talked for almost an hour, catching up on everything we had missed in each other's lives. There was something comforting about it, like a weight was lifting off my shoulders just by talking to someone who remembered me as me, not as Mara's husband, not as the father of 2 kids, but as Declan. By the time we ended the call, I felt lighter. Not better exactly, but less trapped. Naomi had a way of reminding me that life wasn't always this complicated. Before hanging up, she said something that stuck with me. Don't let anyone make you feel small, December. You're more than enough. You always were. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until the silence settled after the call ended. Mara came home later in the afternoon. She didn't say where she had been, and I didn't ask. Instead, I stayed calm, almost detached. When she saw me sitting on the couch with my phone in hand, something flickered in her expression. It was subtle, but I caught it, curiosity mixed with unease. She wasn't used to me not chasing her for answers. She wasn't used to me being distant. How was your day? I asked casually, not even looking up from my phone. She hesitated. It was fine. Just errands, like I said. She stood there for a moment, like she was waiting for me to question her, but when I didn't, she frowned slightly. What about you? I looked up and gave her a small, knowing smile. It was good. Really good, actually. I had a nice chat with an old friend. I watched as her eyes narrowed just slightly. She didn't ask who it was, but I could see the question forming in her mind. It was the first time I felt the tables turn, even just a little. That night, we barely spoke. She scrolled on her phone while sitting on the other end of the couch, and I did the same. But this time, I wasn't waiting for her attention. I wasn't trying to break the silence. I let it stretch between us like a wall, because I knew it was bothering her. Every time she glanced at me, I could feel her unease growing. For the first time, she was the one who looked like she was losing control. Before going to bed, she finally broke the silence. "Declan, who were you talking to earlier?" Her tone was calm, but there was an edge to it that told me she cared a lot more than she wanted to admit. I met her gaze and shrugged. "Just someone I used to know. It was nice catching up. Felt good to talk to someone who remembers me before all of this." I didn't have to say more. The way her face tightened told me everything I needed to know. She didn't like it. "Are you trying to make me jealous?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharper now. I smiled faintly. "No, I'm just doing what you told me to do, figuring myself out." And with that, I turned back to my phone, leaving her to sit with her thoughts. That night, I heard her shifting in bed more than usual. She wasn't as confident anymore, and I could feel the tension growing between us. But this wasn't just about jealousy. This was about reminding her that I wasn't someone she could discard when it suited her. If she thought she could break me, she was wrong. And I had a feeling things were about to get a lot messier before they got better. Mara's behavior changed after that night. It was subtle at first, but I noticed every little detail. The way she hovered around me when I was on my phone, pretending to tidy up or check something nearby, as if she was hoping to catch a glimpse of who I was talking to. The way she suddenly started asking me more questions, where I'd been, what I was doing, if I was free that weekend. There was a shift in her tone, a tension I hadn't heard in months. For so long, she'd been distant and detached, like she had one foot out the door, but now it was as if she wasn't so sure she wanted to leave anymore. I didn't say anything. I didn't call her out on her sudden interest. I let her sit with that discomfort, because for once, I was the one holding the cards. Naomi and I had spoken again that day. It wasn't anything inappropriate. No flirting, no crossing lines, but the connection was real, and it scared me how easily I could talk to her compared to Mara. I told Naomi a bit about what was going on, and she listened without judgment, just like she used to. She didn't tell me what I wanted to hear, either. She said, "Dec, you can't keep letting her hold all the power. If she's walking all over you now, what happens when she realizes you'll tolerate anything?" That stuck with me. I was done tolerating. That evening, Mara made dinner, which was rare lately. She'd been phoning it in for months, leaving me to handle meals or ordering takeout. But now she was suddenly at the stove, chopping vegetables like she was trying to prove something. I sat at the table, scrolling through my phone, not saying much. She cleared her throat. "Who were you on the phone with earlier?" she asked casually, but I caught the sharpness under the surface. I didn't look up. "Just Naomi." "You remember Naomi from college?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mara slowly set the knife down on the cutting board, her face stiffening. "Naomi," she repeated, like she was tasting the name for the first time. "I haven't heard that name in years." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, well, I thought I'd check in. It's been a while." "She's doing well. It's nice to talk to someone who actually listens." The last part wasn't accidental, and I knew it hit its mark. Mara's jaw tightened, and she turned back to the stove without a word. I could feel the heat coming off her, though, not from the pan, but from her barely contained frustration. For the rest of the evening, she tried to be pleasant, asking me about work, about the kids, but it all felt forced. I answered, but I didn't give her more than she gave me. Later that night, after we put the kids to bed, she finally broke. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a show on my laptop, when she sat down across from me and folded her arms. "What's going on with you, Declan?" I looked up, pretending to be surprised. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You're different. You're distant. You're calling old friends out of the blue. You don't even ask me where I'm going anymore. It's like you don't care." I let out a short laugh. "You're asking me if I care? You're the one who went out on a date with someone else and came home acting like it was normal. You told me you needed space, Mara. So, I'm giving you space. What did you expect? That I'd just sit here waiting for you to figure out if I'm worth your time?" Her face flushed with anger, but I saw a flicker of something else too, fear. "I told you why I did that. I told you I needed to feel something again, to feel like myself. It wasn't about him. It was never about him." "Then what was it about?" I asked, leaning forward. Because from where I'm standing, it looked a lot like you were checking out of this marriage. And you didn't even bother to ask me how I felt about it. You just went. She stared at me, her lips pressed tightly together. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something I didn't expect. I hated it, she admitted quietly. The date. It didn't feel the way I thought it would. It just made me feel empty. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay and we could work through it. But another part of me, the part that had been bruised and humiliated, wasn't ready to let her off the hook. Maybe now you understand how I felt when you told me about it, I said, my voice steady. Her eyes softened, and for a second, I thought I saw regret there. Declan, I don't want to lose you, she said, barely above a whisper. I should have felt relieved hearing those words, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a strange power shift between us. For once, she was the one reaching out, and I was the one deciding whether to take her hand. I leaned back on the couch, crossing my arms. Then maybe it's time you start acting like you don't want to lose me, I said coldly. She didn't answer. She just sat there, staring at me, like she was finally realizing that I wasn't the same man she thought she could control. That night, I didn't sleep next to her. I stayed on the couch, not because I was angry, but because I wanted her to feel what it was like when I pulled away. When she came downstairs early in the morning and saw me there, still awake, she looked unsettled. She opened her mouth to say something, but stopped herself. I could tell the words were stuck in her throat. Something told me we had just reached the tipping point, and I knew the next move I made would either push her back to me or tear this entire marriage apart. The following day felt like a quiet battle neither of us wanted to start. I woke up before Mara, still on the couch, staring at the ceiling and trying to decide if there was even a way forward. When she finally came downstairs, her hair slightly messy and her eyes tired, there was no anger on her face anymore, just sadness. The kind of sadness that comes from realizing you've crossed a line you can't ignore. She walked into the kitchen and stood there for a moment, as if she didn't know how to speak to me anymore. I didn't move from my spot on the couch. We just looked at each other across the space, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something raw in her expression, vulnerability. Declan, she said softly, can we please talk? Really talk. No walls, no sarcasm, no fighting. Just us. I nodded silently. She came over and sat on the opposite end of the couch, her hands clasped tightly together like she was bracing for something heavy. I've been selfish, she said, her voice trembling. I thought I needed to go out with someone else to feel alive, but all it did was remind me of what I already have. That date, God, it felt so empty. I couldn't stop thinking about you the entire time. The truth is, I've been so afraid that you don't see me anymore, that I'm just invisible. Her words hit me hard, but not in the way I expected. I had spent so much time feeling hurt and betrayed that I hadn't even considered she might be feeling lost in her own way. Invisible? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Mara, I see you. I always have. But when you told me about that date, it felt like you didn't see me at all. Like everything we've built together didn't matter. She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. It does matter. You matter. I was wrong, Declan. I wanted to feel wanted, and instead of coming to you, I looked somewhere else. I don't even know why. Maybe I was scared that you'd stopped wanting me to. But after last night, seeing you pull away, seeing you talk to someone else, it made me realize how much I still love you. And how much I don't want to lose this. For the first time in days, my anger started to soften. I took a deep breath, leaning closer. Mara, I don't want to lose you either. But we can't keep going like this, pretending everything's fine when it's not. We've both been guilty of not paying attention, of letting life get in the way. But I'm here. I'm right here. You don't have to look anywhere else to feel alive. She covered her face with her hands, a quiet sob escaping her lips. I reached over and took her hands gently, pulling them away so I could look her in the eye. I'm not perfect, I said softly. I don't have all the answers. But I love you, Mara. And I want to fix this, together. Not with games, not with jealousy. Just us. Her lips trembled, and she nodded, gripping my hands tightly as if afraid I'd let go. I love you too, Declan. I'm so sorry for everything. I don't want to be that person anymore. I pulled her into my arms, and for a moment, we just held each other in silence. It felt like we were both exhaling weeks of tension, letting it bleed out of us. That embrace wasn't just forgiveness, it was a promise. We weren't perfect, and we had both made mistakes, but we were still here, and that had to count for something. Later that night, after we put the kids to bed, we stayed up talking for hours. We talked about everything: our fears, the distance that had grown between us, and what we both needed moving forward. There were tears, but there was also laughter, like we were rediscovering pieces of each other that had been buried under years of routine and unspoken frustrations. Mara reached for my hand and said, "No more secrets. No more walking away. We fix things together, okay?" Together, I agreed. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The next day, she deleted that guy's number from her phone right in front of me. Not because I asked, but because she wanted to. She said she didn't need anyone else to remind her of who she was. I could see in her eyes that she meant it. And I deleted Naomi's number too. Because as much as she had helped me remember my worth, my life was here, with Mara. We were far from perfect, but we were ours. Sometimes, relationships break a little before they grow stronger. And as I held Mara that night, feeling her breathe against my chest, I realized that maybe this was our breaking point. Not to end us, but to wake us up. We weren't just going to survive this. We were going to come out of it better, stronger, and more in love than before.